I was really just thinking about my mom, and I was telling the story the other day to someone. My mom who just stayed on this job for, I don't know, my mom worked for probably over 18 years or so at a job, and then they ended up terminating her. And the one thing, is like I said, I'm of Haitian descent, so all of our parents, or many of our parents, I can't say all of them, when they migrated here from Haiti, they all took jobs in medical assisting, nursing, medical technicians, like delivering medication. Those are the things that my mom did throughout, I don't know, ever since I kind of grew up. Kind of been that caretaker, just something that she had a passion about. And and I always ask myself, like, man, ma, why didn't she ever think about leaving? And I think something like really minor happened at her company, and they probably were, probably downsizing, or who knows. But my mom ended up getting either laid off or terminated from her, 18-year job. Absolutely devastated. Absolutely. And I think what ends up happening is our generation, we don't want to play with that. Like, we don't want to sit here and be at a job, and then all of a sudden they just kind of wake us up and be like, yeah, you're not here anymore. you know and I think sometimes while you're at a company, your time is up. You just don't know, right? Like, your time is up, and you're just kind of like, just sitting here lingering. And I'm always asking myself, what's keeping you from going to that other position and getting that other job? What keeps us from doing that? And I was sitting there. Number one of the things I said is really a lack of confidence. I realize that the more and more I'm speaking, even the more and more that I'm doing videos, is the more I do videos, the more confident I get. My son did tell me some advice the other day. He's like, Mark, you got to throw some jokes in there. You see, I'm taking video advice from my 7-year-old son. So you got to throw some jokes in there. Make it funny. People will follow you then. And I usually think I'm really funny, but you get behind the camera, and all of a sudden you're you're all nervous and stuff like that. But as it keeps rolling, the more confident you get. As it keeps going, the more confident you get. And I think that's really the way in your career. You got to figure out how to get that confidence. And I was looking up something, and I was like, man, number one, I truly think, especially when people are like in their interviews or in their jobs, they kind of go into this really, really small place, right? Kind of like humble. And unfortunately, when you do that, it just really shows. It's like, to the employer, they're like, man, I don't know if this person's gonna cut it. I'm not even sure this person's gonna be able to cut it, because of the fact that they're kind of like, they're quiet. They're not really speaking their skills. And to tell you the truth, you probably have tons of skills, but you're just not communicating it. You're not sharing it. And I think that's super important. It's super important to really show the skills that you have through your confidence. So let's just say you're about to be in an interview. Someone asks you a question. You have to answer that question so confidently, like you absolutely know, right? And maybe you don't know the specific answer, but you can answer the lack of an answer confidently, right? And I was looking at this one definition. It was called, what do they call it? Imposter syndrome. And this is, imposter syndrome is where individuals doubt their abilities and feel like they don't belong. And so I'm sitting here like, wow. So sometimes we fall into that imposter syndrome, where you just be like, man, I don't even think I shouldn't even apply for that job, or I shouldn't apply for that position. I don't even belong here. Listen, we all don't belong here. We don't know where we belong. You got to sit there and tell yourself that, like, yo, I do belong on this table. I have the skills and I have the ability that everyone else has on this table. I do belong. So you have to really tell yourself that, because I think that's the number one mistake. Number one mistake is really like a lack of confidence. That's the reason that you're minimized at work. That's the reason that you're not going to be able to get, possibly not get a promotion the way you would want to. Is that lack of confidence? And when I think about my mom, who is a super confident woman, you know, and you sit there and you realize, like, yo, if if that can happen to her, after all these years of working at a company, it can happen to anybody. So you got to make sure that you're taking charge of your career, right? Believe it or not, after she left that one company and she ended up working for another one, she was just like, man, I don't know why I didn't do this years ago. But sometimes it took that little kick in your rear for them to kind of wake you up a little bit. And that's kind of what she did. She got the kick. And then all of a sudden she's like, let me go ahead and try something else. And I was like, at the time I was helping her with the resume. And that kind of reminds me of another thing, when I was helping her with the resume, is just cleaning it up, making sure it represents the work that you do. And, what I think another mistake is just, number one, we all have a resume, but some of the resumes I've come across and some of the resumes I've seen, you got to do a job. You have to review your own resume. Like, you got to look at it as an employer would look at your resume, right? What would an employer say when they see your resume, right? Like, they're looking at it and either it has like words that don't make any sense together. I've seen that too. Like, oh man, this person obviously copied and pasted this part and copy and pasted this part somewhere and put the two things together, and it makes absolutely zero sense. So I think that's really important that you read your resume, that you review your resume, and you have someone else review your resume for you, right? Secondly, make sure there is what you would call, especially if you're changing careers, or changing titles or changing positions, there are things that are called transferable competencies. So transferable competency, that means that this skill that you have in this particular area or in this industry can work in this other industry, right? And I think that's really something that is important to display, not just the fact that you were able to work on this particular system, this specific process, but no, you can work on any processes, any end-to-end workflows, any strategies, anything that has a problem you can work on. You have to show how general the work was, not specifically to this one thing that you've been doing maybe for the last 15 years. You got to be able to show that transferable competency. So I think that's super important. And then that's the one thing that you have to realize is that resume goes with the, there's a marriage there. There's a resume that goes with the cover letter. And the cover letter and the resume, it's just something that goes together. And I'd be interested to hear from like recruiters if they think of something different. Like, does the recruiters think that you don't need a cover letter versus a resume? I've always said that the two goes together. I used to send out my resume, just my resume, but then I'm like, I need another piece, a body of work to really explain to the person, here's why I fit in this role, right? Because sometimes the resume is just kind of one super technical, but then the cover letter gives you an opportunity to kind of show your human side, right? And so I think that's really important, that you'll be able to show your human side in your cover letter. And that's another area that you can, the one idea that I have in terms of cover letters is that you do the research on the company. You research the company, and then from there, you see if there are maybe some products or some problems that they solve, or maybe some volunteer work that they do every year, or something that they do in the community, that really kind of gravitates you to the company or makes you even a better fit. You put that in the cover letter, right? So you got to do a little bit of work, and then remove the typos and remove you got to know you're there, and you're there, right? And you have to know where it fits in what grammatical sentence. You have to know your twos and your twos and your twos, right? Those are all things that I think are going to be very important in your resume when somebody reviews it, unless the person who's reading it doesn't know their twos and their twos and their twos, or their theirs and their theirs and their theirs. But for the most part, I'm assuming that people who are consuming your resume, they know it, right? And then there's also a lot of times the systems are consuming your resume, right? So technology is consuming your resume. So the mistakes that I see is that you're not utilizing the words that are in the job description in your resume, in your cover letter, right? So if they have specific words in the or specific skills that they're looking for in their cover letter, you need to have that, right? So if I was to look, let me look, see if I can quickly look up a job. I'm gonna go on LinkedIn. I'm gonna see. Okay, here it is. Show more. Okay, here. Let me just go into like a legal project manager. That's what it says. Minimize. Stop that. All right. Um, it says strong self-starter skills and problem-solving capability. That's you. Identify and mitigate risk and issues. Ooh, some good skills there. Consistently communicate and manage expectations. There's some other things here. Work across multiple methodologies, including agile, DevOps, automation, and CI/CD practices and technologies. And you may not necessarily be familiar with every single word that's there, but some of these words that are here, they need to show up on your resume. Some of the words that are here, they need to show up in your cover letter, because that's the way that the system that is trying to identify the match, right? So you can almost probably, I've never seen the technology behind these HR recruiting systems, but I'm almost assuming that it's similar to like a dating app, right? Like if you say that, you like someone who's 5'3", particular weight, particular size, particular, so obviously when you start doing the filtering, it's going to match you up based on what your profile says that you like, right? So you say you like these things, then it's going to match you up with these things. That's the same way a job works. The job is going to say, here's the skills that it read off of your resume, and then here's all these companies that are hiring. Here's what they're looking for, and is it a match? And I'm sure it gives them some type of percentage at the top. It's like, hey, this person matches like 90%. This person matches like 80%. This person matches like 20%. And probably anything less than 60 or 50% just kind of goes in the trash bin. So consider that. Think about those things, That's my generation gem. Hopefully that works for you.